Ripple's a company of really professional people working really hard on this. That's why we chose XRP. We believe in XRP. We're not making a price prediction, but we do believe it's a coin that will have the most utility out there. You know, Bitcoin is a store of value. I agree with Mike McGlone, but I think that XRP has a true use case. There's just no doubt about it. And the Ripple team, from the interaction we've had with them, they're really professional. They act like investment bankers over there. They know what they're doing, and they will make this work.
All of the stars are aligning, and things look like they're ready to explode, as even Brad Garlinghouse himself posted today that while overdue in a bunch of ways, this is an incredibly important and exciting step into the continued growth of the XRP market. Now, that comes off the back of their $1.25 billion acquisition of a prime broker that clears $3 trillion per year. That's off the back of the fact that they're actually winning in this entire SEC lawsuit after 4 years. And yes, that is old news per se, but now that those headwinds are behind them, they can actually build and be compliant inside of the largest market in the world. Virtually everything is coming together, as even the CME group just 6 hours ago posted that on May 19th, they are going to trade regulated, capital efficient futures on XRP. And yes, the futures market is massive. The derivatives market is insanely big. And the CME group trades to the tune of quadrillions of dollars per year among institutional investors. So when they have access to XRP, this is likely going to drive some of the price action. And it's available for everyone, whether you're talking in larger or micro-sized contracts, so you can scale your exposure with greater precision and flexibility. This is truly exciting stuff, ladies and gentlemen. And just to give you perspective on the amount of capital in the derivatives market and how much new money it will introduce through the CME group, again, one of the largest derivatives exchanges in the world, here is an actual visualization. So for example, here a square would equal $100 billion. As you can see, the peak net worth of Sam Bankman-Fried was about $250 million. In other words, $25 billion. Then you have sports teams. You have cryptocurrency at the 2021 November peak. You have Russian and Ukrainian GDPs, you have military spending, you have currencies. And it's important to note that this was in 2022. So yes, we've experienced inflation. Yes, you have a slight amount more of these across the board, but really they're not going to be that much bigger. So the visualization works really well. Then you have gold in terms of jewelry, bars, coins, central banks, and other. Below ground reserves, you can see that gold is a large portion of the world's wealth. You have world's billionaires. You have central bank balance sheets. You have the S&P 500 and some of these companies eating up a lot of the global share of money. Then you have, or I would say value, because what is money, right? Other than what people believe value to be. You have the US v China GDP, global money supply, stock markets across the board, global debt between governments, the financial sector, households, real estate, which is an insane one, alongside agriculture, commercial, and we just keep scrolling through until we hit the derivatives market. Now here is the actual market value, here is the notional value, and it's so large it won't even fit on a page when I maximize the size. Even if I minimize it, we're talking to the tune of $600 trillion, and I'm assuming again, this has grown since 2022. It's absolutely insane. And just a piece of the money in this pie is going to now have access to trade XRP on the largest derivatives market in the world. Or maybe I should fact check myself, one of the largest in the world, because I've not done research into a ton of the other ones, or if it's possible that there's another derivatives market that maybe isn't on balance sheets or through private exchanges. And so this explains why people like Sal Gilberti, Tecrium's CEO, went on Bloomberg and stated how he is super bullish on Ripple and XRP, considering the fact that not only is he bullish on Bitcoin, but more as a store of value or a hedge, XRP in terms of its actual utility, and now just how wide they're spreading their net across all financial markets. And so it looks like insiders potentially knew what was coming for XRP, which is why it rallied from about $2.08. And let me go ahead and get out of the way right here, all the way up to a local high of 229 for a 10% move. Since that point in time, yes, we've sold off just slightly, but I'm loving the wick and the price action on the downside right here. Even with a bearish looking candle, it's a very weak candle. It's an inside candle relative to the prior candle on April 22nd. And we have a lot of buyers stepping in at anywhere between $2.12 up to $2.19. So that said, things are looking pretty good. I will dive more into the price action here, but I really want to explain what some of these other catalysts could be that are going to drive the entire crypto market for new highs. And one of those is the fact that a new player has entered the space. Jack Mallers, who is one of the largest proponents of Bitcoin, aside from maybe Michael Saylor, is now CEO and to lead this company called 21 Capital that's launching with 42,000 Bitcoin in assets. The major players behind this investment are Tether, which is one of the most profitable companies in the world, SoftBank, and Cantor Fitzgerald. They plan to be a major Bitcoin bank into the future as the value continues to climb over the years. And here is how they plan to do it. We're going to go ahead and play a short video.
Jack, when did this idea come to be?
The founding story. So I co-founded the business with Tether. I would say I've known the Tether group for over a decade. There just weren't that many Bitcoiners around over 10 years ago. So we've done a lot of work together in El Salvador, et cetera. We've been so inspired by Michael Saylor and all of the public companies acquiring Bitcoin. But I would say over the last few years, that inspiration turned into what we thought was an opportunity and a hole in the market that we could deliver on, which is bringing blue chip credibility and startup upside. We feel like we can bring enough capital and be big enough to win. We're small enough to grow. And most importantly, a pure Bitcoin business. A lot of these companies, they're pivoting from a past operating business. They're rebranding, changing their name. They're maybe selling video games to buy Bitcoin or selling medical equipment to buy Bitcoin. Right. And we're a purpose-built Bitcoin company. We're going to build Bitcoin products, Bitcoin cash flow, and we're going to give Bitcoin per share growth to shareholders and be hopefully the best way for investors to get Bitcoin exposure in the public markets.
Jack, I think off camera, just before we started, you used the word vehicle, a vehicle for Bitcoin. I think like a reasonable question that people have is, what does the CEO of a new company whose mission is to accumulate Bitcoin do day to day? Like, what is it that you're going to try and manage or achieve?
Yeah, so for all the Bitcoiners out there, we encourage you to check out our filing. We've introduced two new metrics to the public markets. One is BPS, stands for Bitcoin per share, as opposed to earnings per share. And the other is BRR, which stands for Bitcoin return rate. And my job and what I'm dedicated to do for our shareholders, in which we view similar to our customers, is grow our Bitcoin per share. So we're an operating company. And when you buy a share of 21, in a hypothetical sense, what we intend to do is, let's say our Bitcoin per share is 0.05. Our intent is to be able to grow that to 0.06 Bitcoin per share, 0.07 Bitcoin per share. Where a vehicle like an ETF, your exposure is static. So 21's an operating business, and we will be building Bitcoin products, Bitcoin operative cash flow, and then using the capital markets to accretively grow the Bitcoin on our balance sheet. So we want our shareholders to get wealthier, get richer in Bitcoin terms, and our metrics encourage the market to view us not in fiat terms, in Bitcoin terms, because we're not here to necessarily beat the market. We're here to build a new one and encourage the world to adopt Bitcoin in a sense that we believe it hasn't yet.
In other words, even when I'm tracking pairs on a chart, you have to think about it, right? I'm always looking at the dollar amount. I'm looking at Bitcoin is equal to $93,000. XRP is equal to $2.20. Why is that? Because we're still always thinking in terms of not how much XRP do I hold, and that in and of itself is the value. Or in the case of Bitcoin with 21 Capital and Jack Mallers, but we're always thinking in terms of how much money would I have and how am I going to now spend that money or use it to better my life. Ultimately, our whole goal in being in this market is to better our lives. So we have to hold assets that are technically going to outperform inflationary environments and fiat currencies, which consistently go down in value. Now, I don't need to give you a long drawn education on this or a course on this, but at the end of the day, if you really want to think in terms of wealth, this is a whole new asset class. And so we have to start thinking in terms of being whole coiners or holding X amount of XRP, right? In order to do better in the future, because these are assets that are likely going to continue to grow as governments and central banks continue to debase their fiat currencies. Now, because this industry is so nascent, and yes, there are a few key big players like MicroStrategy, which are going to become behemoths in the future and already are, we do have some younger and more nimble companies like 21 Capital that are eventually going to try to create a market that is new or possibly even compete with the likes of MicroStrategy because of their business model and more specifically the way in which they approach accumulating Bitcoin. At the end of the day, even the biggest market participants can actually mess up big time. Sometimes it just comes in the fact that they're simply sitting and holding versus putting their capital to work for them, or in terms of their operational costs and structures. For example, 21 has a game plan to actually lower theirs versus other Bitcoin treasury companies. Now, in the case of private investment in public equity or PIPE investors, if you're a accredited investor, you'll likely be able to buy shares of 21 near a 1.0x NAV because they're looking to raise capital. And here's why it might be a good play versus buying MSTR stock. Now, again, this is not an advertisement. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing here. MicroStrategy's size creates diminishing Bitcoin yield return. 21's Bitcoin native DNA, in other words, they started out only buying and holding Bitcoin, whereas MicroStrategy had to consistently rebrand, and now they're just called Strategy. They don't have a legacy business baggage, which allows it to raise capital more efficiently. And also there is 100% insider ownership. Now, in the cases of holding or buying most cryptos online, that's probably not that great. However, in the case of a major company like this, it's actually amazing because as they raise capital, their incentives are tightly aligned to maximize shareholder value. So across the board, it seems like this is a better play in terms of risk to reward. And so when you combine this with the fact that consistently and even now, we are seeing even more Bitcoin being removed from exchanges in order to custody it, the trend is likely going to be up as demand even remains the same. When we look at the Bitcoin Treasuries, for example, right now, the major custodial companies, whether they're public, private, ETFs, are now holding about 3% more Bitcoin than they were 30 days ago. Across the board, whether it's MicroStrategy, Maro, Riot, all of these public companies, you can see that the trend on their Bitcoin is up. And then further take this in consideration with the amount of traders that are now long. Right now, the price on average of Bitcoin is $93,500. You can see on the right hand side, we have a very small cliff for people that are playing the short side, about $3.1 billion. On the left side, or the longs, we have $11.7 billion. This is a massive difference. In other words, more people are long than short. And typically people want to think in terms of counter to this trade, but for whatever reason, I've used this chart long enough and it consistently tells me what the shorter term move is going to be. I like to actually bet with the majority of the money, and right now the majority of the money seems to be long. In other words, they're betting that Bitcoin is going to continue to go up, which is likely going to carry the rest of the market. So as things stand right now, XRP is currently above this price right here at about 215, and then we were supported. This was our actual daily breakout. I still want to see a bit of confirmation, so I have entered a position. I'm taking it with not the entire portfolio of mine, but a portion of my portfolio because of the fact that we're still technically in an intermediate term downtrend and saw some resistance on this trend line where we're hitting the majority of the points, except for on the Trump pump, which was a bull trap. But generally speaking, being back above the 215 range is quite interesting, and it leads me to believe that as Bitcoin continues to trend up, so will XRP. So I still want to see a confirmation above the high right here at 230. I still want to see price above this descending wedge or trend line. And if we do, this would be the start of a new trend to the upside for our longer term uptrend, because this would be our major low. This would be our next low. We're having a series of what? Higher highs. So a higher high here would take us into a full blown trend. And this is something that I would actually continue to scale into and add to my positions. And so by the way, if you want to do more of that chart analysis and learn how to do technical analysis like a pro, you can take our course over at Altcoin Pro University. I'm actually the one that put that one together, and I did it just for people that are learning how to trade or how to see breakouts or how to use volume or how to use all of the basic indicators in order to make their own trading decisions. And all you have to do is go to bullrunners.com. You can find the link in the description below, and we have an offer where we have a ton of members and we have tons of classes and courses and resources, and we have live calls where you can get your questions answered consistently. We have a team of researchers and analysts that are constantly in there helping all of our community members. The value is bar none the best in the space, and the list of guides are endless when it comes to strategies, when it comes to buying and selling, when it comes to DeFi wallets, when it comes to psychologies, and how to avoid getting rugged and scammed, and how to even get ahead of trends with narratives. In other words, to get into cryptos early before they explode. And speaking of, if you want to learn how to get access to this free ebook called Altcoin Secrets, the underground guidebook to becoming a crypto millionaire, you're going to get 23 secrets to pinpoint the next explosive altcoin, create a bulletproof crypto portfolio. This is years and years of being involved in the crypto markets and basically making every mistake under the sun for us to put this together. So go ahead and grab it for free. All you have to do is enter your email by clicking on that button, and you'll see this right here, and you should be good to go. Thanks so much for watching this video. You can find the link in the description below, bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets, and I will see you in the next video, my friend. Goodbye.